So for the sake of being timely, I'll go ahead and start my introductions, and folks on the BAR can just filter back on as needed. But good evening, everybody. Welcome to the March 2022 Charlottesville Board of Architectural Review virtual meeting. We are
April.
now, I'm sorry? Oh.
April, not March.
Oh, goodness, April. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
We're now live on channel 10, and we are continuing to stream on the city's social medias channels. My name is Robert Watkins. I'm city staff, and I'll be handling virtual things for tonight's meeting. Before I hand things over to Sherry Lewis, who will be chairing the meeting tonight, I'll go over a few guidelines and housekeeping tips just to make sure that the meeting runs smoothly. So for everybody who might be watching at home, I will introduce the meeting participants who are online right now. First, we have Sherry Lewis. She's the vice chair of the BAR, and she'll be chairing the meeting tonight. We're also joined by BAR members Ron Bailey, Jody Lehendro, James Zemer, Robert Edwards, as well as David Timmerman. We're also joined by Jeff Werner, who's my colleague on city staff. Throughout the meeting, applicants and other participants will join the meeting as needed. For members of the public who are online right now, who'd like to provide comment, there are several places on the agenda where you can provide comment. At the beginning of the meeting, we allow time for comments from the public for items not on the agenda. And then before the BAR deliberates on each individual application, we allow time for public comment as well. In order to provide comment, though, you'll need to register for the Zoom meeting, which you can do through the city calendar online. And for applicants who are on the call already, you're currently, or when we get to your application, I will share my screen and scan through pages of your application. But let me know if you want me to go to specific images or pages, and I'll navigate there. Like we've done in past meetings, we'll have short periodic breaks if needed, and our chair will direct us for when those are necessary. I'll go ahead and hand things over to Sherry Lewis, but please continue to ask me any questions if you need help navigating the meeting tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you to applicants, members of the public, and also to the board for your patience and indulgence with my first Zoom BAR meeting tonight. So just dive in and tell me if I'm doing anything wrong here. So welcome everyone to the regular meeting of the Charlottesville Board of Architecture Review. On each of the items that we'll be reviewing tonight, staff will introduce the item, and then the applicant will make a presentation which should not succeed 10 minutes if possible. I'll then ask for questions from the public, followed by questions from the BAR. And after we've closed the questions, I'll ask for comments from the public. And then we'll have, and actually members of the public, we asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes at that portion. And then I'll ask for comments from the BAR. Just a note for members of the public, and I'll repeat this this evening, that comments regarding application should be limited to exterior aspects of the prospect and the things that the BAR has purview over, which is basically considering an application vis-a-vis our architectural guidelines. We don't look at things like use of the property. We don't look at zoning regulations. We typically don't look at nor decide on building envelope and other building regulations. Those are not matters that we look at. So we did receive an email I saw today through the portal, and I think some of the comments on that, and it would be great if staff would maybe read that or acknowledge that, or I can as a comment from the public, but some of the issues I think raised by that member of the public don't really have to do with their purview. But that's just a reminder. And then following the BAR's discussion and public comments, the applicant can have a little bit of opportunity to respond if anything has been raised that they need to comment on or respond to or answer questions about. First on our agenda is matters from the public. I don't see any hands raised, but Mr. Watkins, tell me if you see otherwise.
No, I don't, but if you do, we have one attendee right now, and if you'd like to provide comment, you can use this time now to raise your hand.
And that would
And
be,
Ms. Lewis, I don't see
yeah,
their hand
Mr.
raised.
Single, I assume we'll give you just a second, but everybody else is a panelist and participant, so we'll assume that for now, he doesn't have any comments, so that's great. And next up is the consent agenda. That includes just one item, and that is a certificate of appropriateness for 864 Locust Avenue. I don't know if there needs to be any discussion about the consent agenda. Any members of the board? If there is no need for discussion, then would I get a motion for approval, please?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Oh, I can go ahead and call a vote, Ms. Lewis, unless you had something else to say.
No.
Okay, with Mr. Bailey making the motion and Jody Lehindro seconding. Ms. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Timmerman,
Aye.
thank you. Mr. Edwards,
Aye.
Mr. Zemer,
Aye.
Mr. Lehindro,
Aye.
and Mr. Bailey.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Great. So we've taken care of the consent agenda, and the first item on our agenda is a certificate of appropriateness for 500 Court Square. I'll ask Mr. Werner or Mr. Watkins to take over.
Some reason I didn't open it. There it is. Hang on, waiting for well, my computer is slow. So this is a COA request for 500 Court Square. It's the Monticello Hotel. The building was constructed in 1906, North Downtown ADC District, and it is a contributing structure to the ADC District. There is multiple projects that come through for this one. Most recently, you've looked at some windows and some gates were approved at the openings, but there is a wireless communication site up on the roof. And the way that we work those is most of those are handled administratively if they're adding an antenna or changing something around up there. And last fall, I think it's T-Mobile, were installing emergency generators, either a generator or generators, I can't recall which. And the plan was to run the gas supply through the building. So being that nothing would be seen, I was able to sign off administratively on that request. However, they came back and I suspect for cost reasons are routing the gas pipe up the exterior of the building, or this is the request to do that. So the pipe would start, there's I think a meter they would be accessing at the back in the rear parking lot, and the pipe would be going up on the south side. So that's the rear and anchored into the wall and then up and over the parapet and into the generators on the roof. Now I threw a lot of photos and graphics in the staff report. Really make sure we're everybody knows what is being proposed and if the decision's made on where exactly, if the BAR sees it, where exactly this thing would be run. And I think and so right there, Robert and the applicants are proposing to run it up adjacent to that downspout that's on the corner there. You can see in the red line, and in that photo below that I took, that's that same wall. This would be the downspout on the right. So for example, if you were to consider this, is there a preference for which side to put the pipe? I also, one other idea would be to run it into that, and I'm sorry, Jody, I'm hoping you and James, I can't think of the right word, small corner in the brick there, possibly run it there. The next piece of it would be, they've offered to paint this pipe. It's 1.25 inches. We had, the thing I reflected on was the conduits that were approved at the downtown library a couple of years ago, that they ended up painting brown instead of a red, and it actually worked out really well. So there's a question in there about that if you have a preference. I floated the idea of, I know in some buildings and I have images if you all want to reflect on those. They're not, I think, in here, but the places around town where we have things running up the side of buildings, up and over parapets, how we've treated them. Obviously, this is a unique building. We don't have many of these in Charlottesville, so we don't have a lot of pipes running up, I think, 10 stories. But the guidelines essentially say that something like this should be screened or concealed. So there's not a lot of, it's limited guidance. So the options are, to say, no, we don't want to see it at all, or yes, it's okay, but put it here. And if you put it there, here's how we'd like to at least visually mitigate the impact. So it's, I'm sure you have some questions. Like I say, I've got here, I've offered some examples. This is over on Fontaine where the UVA ran some duct work up the side of a building. Obviously not something, I don't think we need to be wrapping this thing. Now here's on, familiar on West Main, the West Street or Main Street Market, obviously, but a lot of stuff going on there, but that was an industrial type of building. I think, what else did I have, Robert, in here that scroll down? So, we do have things going up and over the parapets. So it's not unprecedented, but it's again, the idea of where exactly you all might prefer this to be, and if at all, and how to mitigate that. So I don't know if Brandon is on, any of the folks from T-Mobile are on. I don't know if there's probably more if you all BAR have questions for them.
Yeah, I see a Dan Wilson on, and it says on behalf of T-Mobile, and I don't know whether he's here for the applicant, Mr. Wilson.
Brandon's
And
here, I
also,
see.
and Mr. Bose as well,
Okay.
represented this project. If you care to provide any additional presentation, you're welcome to, and I can share my screen for your application if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is Dan Wilson. I'm with SmartLink on behalf of T-Mobile for this project. Just a quick note, wasn't monetarily. This is a landlord request. They didn't want to run through the building. So this was our proposal to satisfy them. I think everything there that was presented on the application is pretty straightforward. So if you have any questions, we're happy to answer. I don't have any additional comments.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the public at this time? I know we've got now a total of 2 attendees, and they're also panelists that could be interested in this application.
Yeah, please raise your hand if you wish to provide comment. Ms. Lewis, I don't see their hands raised.
Thank you. And questions from the BAR for the applicant?
A quick question from me, if I might. This line would be going up the back of the building, correct?
Yes,
I'll let-
facing Market Street.
Yeah, I'll let the applicant answer.
I have a question. The details I've seen are for applying a pipe on a flat wall surface. I didn't see a detail for tucking it into a corner, a brick corner. So does that mean it can't be done, or is that another detail?
Mr. Wilson or Mr. Bose, either of you?
Yeah, so I also have my construction manager, Brian, here. Brian, can you speak to whether we can tuck that pipe in to the corner of the bricks, or if we need additional clarification on that?
We could get additional clarification, but it would be virtually the same technique utilizing Unistrut, just tucked back into the corner as closely as possible.
As closely as possible. So the strut is a foot wide and it looks like the pipe's centered on the strut. So that's 6 inches from the corner.
So we wouldn't necessarily have to go with a 1 foot piece. As mentioned, we're utilizing a 1.25 inch gas line. I imagine, and of course, I'm not a PE here, but we could utilize a 6-inch strut, and we basically just need enough to anchor into the brick itself, as well as the clamp that attaches to the Unistrut and the pipe itself. Frankly, I don't see the need for a full 1 foot piece.
And that brings up another question. Can you anchor it into the mortar joints and not the brick?
It would be the mortar.
Okay, good. Thank you. And why the south side? And this is for the rest of the BAR. It seems to me that the south elevation is a more prominent elevation than the east side, only because Fifth Street is a frequently walked street going back and forth between the mall and the courthouse. And I can't remember when I've ever seen the east side of this building, but the south side is something that you see when you're walking up and down Fifth Street and from Market Street. So what do other BAR members think about that?
I think that's a really good point. I can't think of the last time I've been able to appreciate that building from that perspective. I think it's probably because you're, looking at the east side. I mean, where can you actually get a good vantage point of the east side? There's not the block or so expanse that you can back up from the building like you can on the other corner. When you're in the park, where it gives you a clear sight lines up. So I think that's a really good point. And I was thinking of the same thing myself as I was walking along Main Street way back from work.
Does the applicant want to make any comments or respond to that? I think that was kind of almost a question from Mr. Alejandro.
Yeah, this is Dan Wilson here again. Brian, I don't remember exactly the details, but I believe we need to go on this side of the building due to where the actual gas main is, and where we can get access to that.
That's correct.
Yep.
It seemed, I'm not in a position to argue with the applicant about engineering things, but if you look at I'm looking at the image that's on Appendix 1 that shows kind of the rooftop generator. Sorry, it's on page, a numbered page 5 and page 25 of our materials. Looks like you could take it around that side, that east side. You're kind of heading in that direction anyway.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
I appreciate that once you get to that lower addition, you're going to have to navigate that, but it almost seems like you could go straight down the side of that building rather than going over its roof and down. I don't know. Anybody seeing what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see that the gas line is originating at the southeast corner. So why couldn't it go east just as easily as it goes west? I mean, south, sorry.
If I can, there are photographs further along in the appendix that I'm on, the page that, keep going, right? That next one down is, and zoom out. I don't know if that helps. I guess I would offer is that there's, at least on the south elevation, we're dealing with some things that are on the side of the building versus introducing something new on the east side. And then I guess only from a construction side, I would wonder is, I don't know if they're working off of big cherry picker or hanging something over the side. I don't know what the accessibility is on that side, but that was when I was looking at it and thinking of options. I left that out just thinking there's nothing there now. Let's not add to it. So just my 2 cents.
I actually agree with Jeff on that, is that if you put it parallel to those gutters there, or whatever that is, those downspouts, it could get lost. Whereas if you put it on the east side where there's nothing now, it would be obviously adding something that wasn't there before, and perhaps more prominent.
On page 28 of our materials is a really good picture of that corner with the, for lack of a better word, HVAC garden in the addition. And there are certain conduits that are coming out of basically it's 300 Court Squares Annex, the building next door to it. And that may preclude these gas lines going there. I don't know, but did everybody see that? The white conduits that are coming out of the back of 300? So comments from the board. Are we here? I guess, are we hearing from the applicant that they definitely want to do the south wall? Dan and Brennan?
Yeah, so this is Dan again. Brian, I wasn't a big part of this design. Do you have thoughts on this?
I mean, frankly, from a construction standpoint, either would be viable. Obviously, closer to the downspout would be better for concealment. I believe that's why we just chose to stick with that.
Okay, so I do have a question, and I'm trying to find a good photograph that would illustrate this condition, but it does appear as we get up to, there's no cornice on this side of the building, but as we get up to the parapet wall, that the building is wider. So when you come over the roof, you've got to sort of, for lack of a better word, hug the building. You'd have to do some turns there. Is anybody able to articulate better than I am?
It corbels out.
Yeah, thank you.
couple
Corbel is the word. Yeah, awesome. And how do you, and just, I'm curious with the applicant, how you handle that condition. You probably don't have right hand, 90-degree turns in a gas line, but would there be a subtle turn that would allow it to hug the building, or would you just come over the wall and drop straight down, which would leave these lines, after you get, down 6 or 10 feet, leave the lines far out from the building? And that kind of impacts the way, it would make it more prominent and probably a whole lot less appealing. And sorry, I'm not being very eloquent about what I'm trying to describe. Dan or Brandon or Brian?
No, I understand.
Yeah.
We would the building as closely as possible. Obviously, if it protrudes at the top, we wouldn't keep that space off for the, the following 10 stories all the way down. With 90s and what have you, it would hug.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the BAR members on this?
Just following up on that comment, on appendix 1 on the top right-hand corner, there's the image. I don't know who produced that image, of the red line going up and then the little diagonal. I don't know if that diagonal was intended on showing that condition. I don't know if anybody can comment on that. And then I just had a few other, just wanted to confirm that it's just one line and that this isn't like one line of many future lines that are going to be installed. And then I was just curious about how many anchors, there were working their way up.
All right,
Yeah, I
Dan,
can
I'll-
speak
Brandon,
to the-
Brian? Yeah.
Sorry,
go
yeah.
ahead.
So this is Dan. I could speak to the red line question at the first. Yeah, that's just to kind of show that the building kind of comes out. It'll be a straight run. So there's not going to be a weird angle at the top there, wrapping over. And it's also a single line, right, Brian?
single line, correct. And that diagonal, I think that's just to see where it lands at T-Mobile's equipment. That will actually flow on the backside of the parapet and on the rooftop itself, so it won't be visible at all from the ground.
Thanks for that clarification. And was there a question about how many struts or basically holders will be all the way down this building of 10 stories?
As I recall, there are two details. One says every 8 feet and the other one says every 10 feet.
I'm looking at the latest detail we have. It says it's every 10 feet.
And sorry to back up to a question. It's a steel pipe, right? So is it gonna be gray if it's not painted? I assume.
Brian, it's gray pipe, right?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it'll be black, then likely rust if it's not painted.
Can you repeat that again? Did you say if it'll be rust if it is going to be painted?
No, so gas lines are typically black pipe.
Right.
Is galvanized, which means they're steel and they will rust rather quickly. They're not painted.
Are they not? I think aren't you supposed to paint them? Isn't it required to paint them after the meter? I could be wrong, but I think I remember that.
Safety yellow in traffic areas.
Right. Yeah.
Correct. Besides the buildings, no, safety yellow wouldn't be required.
Right.
So just to clarify, the color would be black, Brian?
Correct. In its natural state, it would be black, and then of course, ultimately rust.
But you're proposing to paint it to match adjacent surfaces according to this diagram.
Yes.
And by adjacent surfaces, do you mean those downspouts?
Yes.
Any other questions from the BAR members? If there are none, are there any comments from the public at this time? Mr. Watkins, do you see anyone?
1 second. We have 3 attendees. If you'd like to provide any comment, please raise your hand. Ms. Lewis, I don't see any raised hands.
Okay, so no comments from the public. I'll move to comments from BAR members and just dive in, gentlemen. Dive in or I'll call on you. How about that?
Yes, I tend to agree that the south side actually makes sense if it is able to be tucked up really close to the downspout. You know, you've already got a bunch of vertical interferences, if you will, on that facade of the building, and this would be introducing something new on the east side. So if it can be tucked in and painted to match that downspout, I feel like that's a pretty good answer.
I agree.
Just throwing this out there, but maybe I wonder if an alternate would be if you went in that route, instead of painting it the color of the downspout, where there's a pretty, you know, consistent series of black downspouts. You know, if you found a color that's more consistent with the brick, so that it really kind of disappears more, it doesn't vibe with the downspouts, because you're going to see it if it's the color of the downspout and it goes up above that one on the corner, you're going to see it. Just thinking this through.
Yeah, that'd be fine. I've just always found it can be difficult because bricks change color. But yeah, if you can find a red or brown tone that is a decent match, it's fine with me.
And Jeff, remind me on the application we had recently on the library, did we specify brown because the brick was more brown, or I can't remember?
It was, yeah, the result was we had said, we'll look at the colors in the field, and you know, the assumption had been something similar. And when we went out there, and I think I maybe even had included the different colors, or maybe I meant to, but when we looked at what was close to the brick, it just looked like it didn't work. And I've been joking that brown that, you know, and I circulated and said, hey, here's what I'm thinking. You all said, yeah, you're right. I've been joking we should give them an award because it really works. That brown color somehow just dissipates into the background. Now, I don't know, the masonry over here is a little bit different, and obviously the exposures on a different side of the building, but I would tend to say something that is not bright, not red. Sometimes when you try to match something, it ends up being worse. And something that's sort of flat and uniform would be preferable to kind of artificially trying to make it disappear. You know, we know it's there. Let's not try to make it, you know, like something it's not. So I think that the option for that would be and I think I laid it out in the report, is to give me the ability to look at options, and that if I need some feedback on it, I'll circulate it. And then we kind of can do it by, you know, again, kind of an email check. I have no problem with that.
Thank you. Any other comments from the BAR? We've heard from a few. Mr. Alejandro, Mr. Roberts, or Edwards, sorry.
Yeah, I agree with what everyone else has said. Either go black or try and match as close as possible. But I vaguely remember my first month with the BAR, we had a similar case where I think the applicant tried to paint using a color that was pretty close to brick as possible.
I think we've kind of used up our comments from the BAR, unless there anything else anyone wants to say. Does the applicant wish to respond to any of this? Are you good with the comments and questions so far?
Yeah, hey, this
Yeah.
is Dan again. Yeah, I think we're good with these comments and questions. For in terms of painting, we're happy to go with, you know, whatever the board recommends from there. So
Great.
Hey, Dan, how close can you get it to the downspout?
We can tuck it in right next to the downspout, I believe, right, Brian?
Correct.
Yeah, basically touching. So
Great. Thank you.
Anybody want to take a stab at a motion to kind of capture?
And, before you do, I just, make sure you kind of articulate, I think what you're talking about, a location, right or the left side, which facade, and then a color option, something appropriate that if you wish to let me use my judgment, just say so. And like I said, I think there's something in the discussion that might help.
Thank you.
I'll take a stab at it if you'd like.
Please proceed, Mr. Bailey.
All right, thank you. Having considered the standards set forth in the city code, including the city's ADC design guidelines, I move to find the proposed gas pipe at 500 Court Square satisfies the BAR's criteria and is compatible with this property and other properties in the North Downtown ADC district, and that the BAR approves the application with the idea that the pipe will be as close to the downspout on the south side as possible, and that the color will be submitted to and approved by the city staff as appropriate.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. With
Mr.
a,
Turner.
with a motion by Mr. Bailey and a second by Mr. Timmerman, I will call a vote.
We should
Can
have
I
it.
ask, can there be some discussion? Can I
Yeah,
ask?
there should be
for-
discussion after a motion's made.
Sure.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Lehendra.
I would ask for an amendment that not to replace as close as possible to right next to.
Do you accept that, Mr. Bailey, as a friendly amendment?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
Any other further discussion or any other fun amendments out there anybody wants to make? Great, Mr. Watkins, if you can call a roll.
Sure. Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Lehendro,
Aye.
Mr. Zemer,
Aye.
Mr. Edwards,
Aye.
and Mr. Timmerman.
Aye.
Thank you. The vote passes unanimously.
Congratulations, gentlemen.
thank you.
Thank you very much. This is Brandon Bose on behalf of T-Mobile and SmartLink. Just want to thank the board for your time.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
Thank you.
Next up is our certificate of appropriateness request for 707 West Main Street. And I think Mr. Warner has that.
And we're also joined by Cliff Fox and Orhun Dykman, who are representing this project.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I'm always worried my computer's gone unstable, but that's you, Robert, shaking it up. Okay. This is a COA request for 707 West Main Street. This is within the West Main ADC district. The request is for to replace the storefront glass, so it's not. And there's lots of terms for storefront that we can refer to tonight, but this is for the glazing on the front, and then there's the small panel on the side as you go into the entrance. This building was built around 1925. It is contributing to the ADC district. It is kind of partnered with it's one building, but this facade is partnered with the adjacent address. So when you're looking at the photo here, though, this is the storefront on the right-hand side. There have not been any prior requests for this address. There was some, I think, an admin review of some ventilation back in 2013. So the request is, and Robert, if you can just roll down to that next top of the page there and zoom in a little bit. So this is a, you can see there's three fixed piece, three pieces of glazing here, the fixed window, and well, they're all fixed now. And the intent is to replace that front, where there are now 2 panes of glass with a 5-unit operable, I call it an accordion window. And the fixed panel there as you go into the entrance on the right-hand side would just be fixed glass. This was not the easiest one to unfold at the staff level. Robert and I had I think we've had projects where we've talked a long time, and this one is up there. Just trying to evaluate how best to kind of balance our recommendation. I don't think we can come down and say a staff recommendation, but to try and to offer some perspectives, some observations that might help sort of work through your decision making on this. What I know is, there's some critical elements in this, and particularly that transom overhead is staying. Robert, what did you refer to that as?
Just the transom, the prism glass transom that's referred to in the survey.
And and at the bulkhead, which is the bottom, will remain. And so this comes down to these 3 panes of glass being removed. And we were discussing earlier, it's not a lot that's leaving, but there's what's going back in is very different in design. And so I think that's the primary question for you all to work with. As far as detail kind of questions, Robert, if you would scroll down to my page 5 and to kind of walk through a couple of the observations we had. So yeah, that's it. So just, we have better images if we want to flip to them, but just to go through it now. So you've got that transom above, and then there's I don't know if it's a metal piece. I suspect it's a part of the original storefront that kind of a plinth looking piece that, or at least the trim profile running across the top, that will remain. And then there is a corner post that's metal that will be replaced with a similarly sized piece of metal. It is not a structural element, but it's something to anchor the new window frames into. You see the number 2 there is a piece of bronze strip that is used just as sort of the glazing stop to hold in the glass. That piece would be removed, and obviously the new frame would fit in there. So again, the bulkhead remains the same, the transom remains the same, that trim across the top remains the same. Corner posts were replaced with something identical to it, and the bronze glazing strips are removed. So as far as, and obviously the glass. So as far as those historic elements that are there now. And then on the opposite side, you can see in the bottom left photo, there's a frame portion that goes against the brick, and that would be removed as well. And then Robert, do you have that? I don't think go back up. I'm sorry. Go back up. So the other question I had for the BAR to kind of weigh, and hopefully this makes it's clear here. So there's on the underneath where head, that's that there's 2 details. The one on the left is that's the frame of the accordion window, and the one on the right is the frame of that fixed panel that's next to the entrance. So you can see there's a difference in that dimension, the thickness of that frame. I think roughly 5 and 5/16 of an inch at the head, and then at the sill, the similar. I think it's like 4 5/8, whereas the fixed frame on the side is 1 3/4 inch frame. So there's that difference in thickness. I don't know if that is something that could be, I guess they could close it down a little bit. I don't know if that's of issue, but I wanted to raise that. And then as far as if you all were considering approving this, I would recommend that at least these bronze pieces that are removed, and I don't know to what condition or to what extent the original are still there, but at least they be bundled, tagged, and left on site that the opportunity is there if there's a future restoration of the storefront. So that's, and as far as going around town, Robert and I have also been talking about what's happened, what have we had. There's some accordion type windows and roll up windows that I don't think ever came to the BAR, but there are examples around town where storefronts have been altered. We have several in the mall. We have a lot of buildings with the original storefronts are still there. So it's a mix. I think by and large where we have operable windows that have gone in that you all have looked at, primarily think of the Otto's there on Water Street, although that was more of a contemporary building, not a historic building. And I know that the Whiskey Jar, BAR approved sort of some operable accordion type doors back in '96. I know that the Red Pump storefront was replaced and with operable doors. You know that at Chaps we approved the complete replacement of the storefront that's there. So there's no one size fits all, and there are examples across the board. But I think really that the question here is more, to me, we know elements are being removed, but does what's going in there, is that change in look and design, is that acceptable within the district? So with that, any questions for me? That was easy. I don't know if Cliff's here or.
And Mr. Dykman.
Okay.
I'm happy to go back through to either representatives of this project and share my screen if you provide to wish an additional presentation.
So Jeff and Robert, you all agree that the elements that are being proposed to be replaced with the storefront, they're original, they're historic.
If you look closely at the photos, it's looks like there's some small pieces of crown mold. It's yes and no. It appears to be by and large, yes, of a 20th century materials. I don't know if it's 1920s materials, but given that the similarity with the storefront adjacent to it, yeah, my sense is that this is primarily original material, just not original glass. We know that because the glass got smashed, I believe.
Yeah, that was my assessment, walking across the street, spending some time with it this afternoon. It's the same kind of bronze stops that are used with the prismatic transom matrix, the exact same types of trim and corner mullions that are used in the mirror image store just on the other side. So they appear to be the historic materials. Thank you.
Applicant, Mr.
Laura?
Fox, Mr. Dickman. Sure, it's all yours.
Orem?
I
I think you're muted.
Okay, there you are.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Orem.
Oren, you're muted, but I just asked to unmute you. Yeah, you're good now.
All right. Hi, everyone. This is Orhan Dickman, and we are here to apply all the regulations of the city. And also you have our proposal plan. And thank you for Mr. Warner explaining everything, our plan. And we will coordinate with the Dotson Glassdoor to make sure we are following all the city rules. And if you have any questions, also the reason that we are changing our glass, there was a cracks, isolation problem on the corner, and then we had to change it. And then we decided to make like folding glass, but we don't want to change any frame or outside historical view. We are just trying to make new glass, and people after pandemic wants to sit outside or want to feel like outside refreshing air, and that's why we wanted to change, like we wanted to make folding glass. This is the reason. And yeah, for this project. And you also have our proposal plan.
Thank you. Mr. Fox, did you have any comments on behalf of the
I'm just-
applicant?
I'm just here. I'm the property manager. I've been working with the property owners for the past 12 years. They're supportive of the change. And we've read staff's report and we understand some of the concerns. Some of the bronze trim is in substantial disrepair. I don't know if Mr. Alejandro had a chance to look at it closely, but it's been drilled multiple times, either taking it down and replacing it or whatever. Anyway, that's all.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the public? I think we've got one attendee and we've got a couple of panelists that may be considered members of the public. They're not related to this.
Hi, may I add a couple of things also?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I also registered for the.
Could you just identify yourself and give us your name? Yeah.
Yes, my name is Gökhan Deniz Dikmen. I am Orhun's brother. Also, I've been doing business since 5 years in city of Charlottesville. I own a restaurant called Sultan Kebab in the 2nd Street and Garrett Street. And then in this project, I am supporting my brother. We are in the process of preparing the new place for them. And we are originally from Turkey. That's going to be also, kind of like Mediterranean, Aegean cuisine oriented Turkish cuisine. They're going to represent in this restaurant. And since we are coming from very historical old country, we really love old historical stuff and preserve that and not to mess with the historical pieces. We love history. We are coming to the history of the country. In this project, the idea started, there were a couple of small cracks already in the window in the corner, but at the same time the place is a really boutique old restaurant space, but unfortunately they didn't have an outdoor space, and since 2 years now, with the pandemic, giving the option to the customers, giving some fresh air, some outdoor feeling, it's really like one of the main reasons to survive for the restaurants. I was lucky I survived as a restaurant because I have a huge airy space and I have a huge outdoor space. But in this case, in this place, my brother didn't have that chance. And then since the kind of like when we were talking about replacing the window, we came to the idea that changing this window pieces, 2 pieces, 5 folding pieces, that we have also the different examples in the around the city, and they already did the application. They are working with the Dodson Glass Company, and in the application, I think everything is explained. And earlier, Mr. Jeff also explained everything. So as a frame, a historical look, nothing is going to change. Only that the glass piece, glass front, it will be the idea. switching that to the folding glass. So when the weather is nice, when the good weather's in the springtime, fall time, to give the people some fresh air and the outdoor. So that's the idea. Thank you very much for letting me talk.
Thank you, Brothers Dickman.
Yes.
I don't think we have any questions from the public. Are there questions from the BAR for the applicant?
You said there are cracks in the current window. Could you describe that a little bit more?
That was, I think, it might be maybe from the before or, in the process that when we get, there were like, in the like kind of like, when you see that the pictures, there is already, we had to replace that with the plastic pieces there to kind of like, because there were a couple of cracks and also there was some like, gap there, losing some air, and we had to replace that window. But while they were moving some pieces inside, that crack is got bigger. That's why for temporary we replaced with that plastic piece there, just to keep that air inside. That's how everything started.
So the window would have to be replaced in any case, whatever the window is.
And also on the left side, next to the door, there's a like one piece there. It's not removable. It's fixed piece glass that has also glass cracked in the corner. That will be replaced, but it's not going to be removable. It's going to be fixed glass there. So it was similar to that crack there.
I got a question, clarification. So you're just proposing to replace the window at 707, but not proposing to replace the window at 709, which is the same building, but the other side of the entrance. Is that correct?
No.
No.
Yeah. Yes, it is correct.
Okay.
Just 707.
Just 707. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I see some drawings of the window frames. Is there a drawing of what the window frame would look like in the actual building?
Yes.
It's there's elevations in the submittal and then there not elevations of the building, but the showing the window, the accordion window, and then there's frame details. So but there's not a photo sim or anything like that. No.
Any other questions from BAR members for the applicant? Let's move on to comments. Are there any comments from members of the public? We still have just one attendee here.
Doesn't look like they're offering any comment.
We did receive an email that I'm going to try to just summarize. It was sent to BAR members from Carl Schwartz, who is a past BAR member and past chair. And I'll try to read the relevant portions that pertain to the application. He encourages us to walk the block and look at the existing storefront rather. He says it's not a typical 2x4 aluminum extrusion, but he believes that all but 2 of the retail spaces on the block still retain their original storefront. He notes that the BAR denied informally, he doesn't think it came as an application, the replacement of the storefront at the neighboring Doma restaurant. And he said he could be wrong, but he believes that inserting a folding window without basically removing that existing bronze frame might be impossible. He does think that the storefront is historically important. Any other comments from the public at all? And if not, I'll move on to comments from BAR members.
I can start if you'd like. So I personally see this as one building unit, and I think that installing a folding accordion style window on one side and not the other would be very asymmetrical to this facade. And I think it would distract from the historic character. So I don't personally think I could support this application as it's submitted. However, I might venture a recommendation that possibly the applicant might consider some sort of large pane like sliding window that would therefore maintain the center mullion. That Dodson would have to figure out if that's feasible, but that may be a solution to provide some fresh air, but while maintaining the kind of the historic look. And maybe that could be placed behind the historic bronze frame. Just an idea, but those are my comments.
Other members?
I think what's being proposed is quite a bit different than what we're looking at. And I think what's there now, while obviously not good shape, there's something special about the transom, the prismatic effect. I think it was maybe my first night in town in Charlottesville. I went to a concert there, and I remember that feature. And when you look at some of these, any of the photographs, but in particular the one, the black and white, I think it's from the 1996. You get a really good view, I think, of the whole composition of it. And I think what stands out and what makes it special is the, architecturally significant, is the profiling that happens everywhere. And I think Jody pointed out earlier that everything is sort of one piece. There's really a fineness sort of to the articulation of the frame up above and down below. The sort of proposed substitute has a much thicker frame, and it would start to break up the sort of this wonderful kind of expanse of just glass underneath that transom in a way that I find to be detrimental. And I also agree with James in that doing it on one side and not doing it on the other would also detract from the overall effect of the building. But I do appreciate what you're trying to do here. And, certainly, I think your intentions are good. I do agree with James that there's likely an alternative that will work. I think you have to think about it much harder and explore it a little bit more deeply. I think whatever that proposal is, for me, I think it's really important to see the drawings, not just of what the windows are, but the windows in the space. So understanding how thick the frame is up above and down below. Also understanding exactly how that works within the wall. So seeing a wall section of that, I think, is pretty important, so that when we approve it, we know what we're approving. I would hate to approve a window assembly, and then when you get into it and you start looking at the constructability of it, you come to the realization that it's actually not what the proposal is. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Other members of the BAR with comments on this application?
I'll chime in with the fact that I did spend some time looking at it, and Cliff is right. There is damage to the bronze trim, But I believe it can be repaired. I've known it, similar kinds of trim to be repaired in the past. And it's a distinctive design. It's clearly, I mean, it's done to maximize the views from the street into what was a furniture store for both of these buildings. Well, for the pair of buildings. Also, the same owner developer, Carter, did the corner building to the west, and it also has that really interesting prismatic glass transom in the square matrix. So there's a style that's continuous. It says something about the history of development of the three buildings together, and I find the storefront design to be distinctively interesting, and it's historic, and it would be a real. It would be inappropriate to change one side and not the other side when they mirror each other so well. So it's something that I really cannot support.
Mr. Bailey, Mr. Edwards, I think we haven't heard yet from you. If you have any comments.
I'm intrigued by James's idea of large flat panes of glass that could be sliding, and that you could mirror the exact look, perhaps, or very close to what it was before, and still provide fresh air. And maybe that would be a way to go in that direction to achieve both the goals that Mr. Dickman would like to do, and also maintain some of the character that other members of the board are worried about.
If Mr. Edwards doesn't have any comments, I just have one that I don't think has been expressed yet. I find the folding doors really interesting, and we've seen them elsewhere. But in this case, in this setting, it's a folding window. And when we get these accordion windows, the window will be more prominent on the street side than the historic storefront. And I feel like it's will a little bit subordinate the historic storefront in that plane to these operating windows and what they may look like. And I think that's one of the reasons why several members, and I think I'd throw myself in the camp, agree with Mr. Ziemer's suggestion that holding that plane and having movable windows that would move vertically, but they wouldn't break that historic storefront plane, might be just a lot more compatible with our guidelines. Does the applicant wish to make any additional comments after hearing our comments?
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Was that
But I heard
Mr.
Cliff.
Dickman, was that no?
Oh,
Actually, I would like to say one thing, but Orem, you go ahead. This is your show.
No, please, I'm okay. I don't have any additional comments.
Okay.
it sounds like the BAR, Cliff and Ms. Dugman, is that possibly there's some options to explore that, so the way to do that would be you all could request a deferral, and that just bumps it to whenever you have something to bring back. And if you know, to meet with, probably meet with folks at Dotson and float some of these ideas but that would be me offering a recommendation to you all in this case. And or the BAR could defer this, in which case, if they did that, then it would be have to come back in May. So by an applicant requesting the deferral, essentially you all control the calendar. If the BAR does it, then we would have to see this again in May. And so I'm sorry if I'm being presumptuous about where the board's heading, but I just wanted to add that if it was okay.
I would say it looks like the majority don't support approving this, so I'll just ask the applicant, Oren and Cliff, what you'd like to do here. Mr. Warner's given you some options.
No.
Orem's the applicant.
Yes. We would like to do that glass because of that reason we explained, but yeah, we can work on it to make sure it will look definitely like rustic, historical color, and also we can wrap with we're gonna wrap with the same color that looks like right now. We will work on it to looks definitely not changing the view, historical view. And for the safety, we had to do it because there was cracked. That glass had to change. That's why we are doing that long process. And then also we are the new entrepreneurs. It's a big cost, but we said we had to do it because we are trying to do a new restaurant in Charlottesville. We want to serve new good food, and then we need to change the glasses. Yeah, and if you have any requirements about do something about the material, we can do it. We can work on it.
Orem, what they're asking you to do is decide whether you want to defer the application and bring it back once you've made the changes that they seem to want. They don't want the accordion door. They want a sliding window or something close to that. They're particularly concerned about the asymmetry. If you walk on the north side of the street, if you go back to that 1996 photo, it looks like 3 storefronts, not 2 or 1 building. So I would task the bar with that. Even from across on the south side of the street, it's the photograph that helps that read as 1 building. Anyway, they're going to do what they're going to do, but you're going to have to change your window to get it approved here.
Yes, we have one last question earlier. The bar mentioned about the 707 part, 709 part. If the 709 will do the same kind of like folding glass window, the project would it be accepted?
I'll let members of the BAR respond to that question kind of individually, just to kind of do a poll, Mr. Dickman. So would anybody, I guess by show of hand, be supportive if they did the other side of the door opening with the accordion windows? So Mr. Edwards is signifying that he's supportive and Mr. Bailey is. So you need 4 people, because there's 6 of us right now, you need 4 people to approve that. And I think you're a couple people short of that right now if we were to vote on that. I'm trying to avoid taking a vote and having this not approved. So if you'd like to, you can take a deferral, which means you would go back, collect, and you're welcome to call staff or any of us, collect comments that we've given to you, maybe redesign the movable windows in a way that we've discussed. They would be maybe flat and opening on a vertical plane instead of folding. And see if it's feasible to do the other side as well. That's, you're right that there's two things going on here. And then maybe come back next month. If you could work with Dodson and you can get some plans back to us. I know that staff will help you. I think informally, I'll say that I can't imagine there's a member of this board that doesn't want to see this happen. All of us like the fresh air, and we want to support businesses like yours. But I think that the accordion doors are not going to be passed tonight. So we just want to give you an option. Would you like to defer, which means you go away and you redo it? Okay, great. And is there a motion among BAR members to accept the deferral by the applicant?
Yes.
And second?
Second.
I'll say.
And Mr. Watkins?
Sure. With the motion by Mr. Edwards and a second by Mr. Bailey, I will call a vote. Ms. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Timmerman,
Aye.
Mr. Edwards,
Aye.
Mr. Zemer.
Just a question. We're accepting their request for a deferral, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yes,
Yes.
aye.
Thank you. Mr. Lehendro
Aye.
and Mr. Bailey.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
And-
And also, we are short 3 BAR members tonight, so there are 3 voices that weren't in this conversation that I imagine all 3 of them would be varied and interesting. So it would be helpful to have them at the table for this discussion, and let's we'll, Mr. Dykeman, you and I work and with Clef, and we'll kind of digest what the BAR's offered and see what we can make of this. But yeah, definitely would like to work with you.
You know where to find Mr. Jeff, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank-
Okay.
Thank
Well,
you
we'll
very
be-
much, and we'll hope to see you next month.
Okay, thank you so much. See you next time.
And by the way, BAR members, I believe we will be going in person in May. It's we're tinkering with some experimental mixed board meeting with people via Zoom. We'll see how the chaos works out over the next couple of weeks, but we may all be actually in the same room in a couple of weeks. So,
Okay, great.
all right, next up.
Next up is the certificate of appropriateness request for 313 Steep Hill Street. I do want to note, this is 313 Steep Hill. It's within the Woolen Mills Village Historic Conservation District. That's different than our usual architectural design control districts, different set of, we call it, design control light, different set of criteria. And certainly if this were within, this is a contributing property within that district for sure. But if it's not individually protected and it's not within our usual ADC, I just want to note that. I also wanted to note before Mr. Warner goes into a staff report that I've previously represented these applicants on a legal matter. It was unrelated to the application before us tonight. Under the Virginia Conflicts of Interest Act, I don't believe that I have a conflict, and I think I'll be able to participate, but I just wanted to note that I don't have any stake in the outcome of this, but it was a related matter. And with that, Mr. Warner?
And thank you, Sharon, on that. I did receive a question earlier today about a recusal. If now I can just repeat what I said to that individual. It's the primary reason you would recuse yourself from a decision is if you are, if you have a financial interest, if you have something to gain from that decision. So if that's the case, then it's no brainer. You should recuse yourself and express that. There are also times where someone may simply feel uncomfortable with participating, and that's, you are privileged to do that, but it is not there's not a requirement that you recuse yourself because of that. So just to be clear, and I know it's a small town. This is it's difficult to sometimes separate, but the legal reason for you to recuse yourself would be if you stand to benefit from a decision. Otherwise, it's a judgment call on your part. I think the BAR would respect that. I have been told that as long as we have a quorum to establish a meeting, then we can continue with deliberating and voting on something. Although you do have to wonder, it'd be odd if 5 of you tonight recused yourselves. There was 1 vote, but let's hope that doesn't happen. Okay, my legal lecture is finished. Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
thanks a lot for that legal venture, Mr. Warner. I don't have any stake in the outcome of this pecuniary money otherwise. So just go ahead with your staff report if you could.
So, and I just before I begin, I have received, I know you all received an email earlier, received a follow-up from an individual expressing some concern about this project. So, or not about the project, but the process. So I just want to make sure I don't forget to mention that.
I can read, I'm kind of prepared to read that in comments from the public once we get there.
Okay, and then there's a follow-up to the response. So so what we have, close these. This is again, Sherry, thank you. This is a project within the Willow Mills Village Historic Conservation District, and say that up front because conservation districts were intentionally, in fact, very intentionally established with a less rigid level of review than we would have for an IPP or for a property within an ADC district. So this is a COA request for 313 Steep Hill Street. I do have to say, it kind of an interesting place because the street is grass. I didn't realize we in the city had city streets that were still, maybe we should have more streets that have grass on them. The structure was built in 1897. It is contributing to the Willow Mills to the Historic Conservation District. It's I like reading these old building descriptions: 2-story, 3-bay frame dwelling with hip roof and 2 prominent cross gables. And it is interesting the way this house has sort of looked like it. Maybe you would often see a family had kids and they just kept building, or it did not appear to have been built as a duplex. So it's kind of an interesting design to it. It's weatherboard siding. It's on a brick foundation, and no prior reviews have come to the BAR for this. What is, and I've been talking to Robert about this one, Robert Nichols, about this a month or so. There is the historic front porch. Well, actually, yeah, you see there on the bottom left, was enclosed at some point in time. Most of what's inside was stripped away. The siding, trim, the windows are gone. I think the only thing that survived is the entablature, the roof framing, the porch framing, and the column in the corner. And so the request is to remove the enclosure that's there now and bring that porch back to an open porch that would then be screened in. And with that, in addition, the porch to be extended and wrapped around the side, continuing that screened-in porch. And then to the rear along the side, an enclosed addition that would be part of the interior of the house. The little bit of the struggle we had with this one is that you're often asked to make additions, not, make sure they look like additions, make sure that they differentiate themselves from the building. The thing you have here, though, is you have a porch that you're extending, and I guess my staff report, expressed it, but the sort of the idea of trying to take something that should be continuous and try to make it look like two different things, I thought was probably not the desirable result. I think that the preference would be for some continuity. So that's where my kind of reflection or my recommendation comes in on this. I think that the overall, the materiality of it, it does look like it wasn't a period piece. The foundation with the way the siding is done, and then of course on the rear addition. So, but so that was my recommendation, or would be my recommendation, is that I think it does lend itself to being different. The cornice line, trying to change that profile, I would say as a former builder would probably drive me crazy, but I mean, it obviously can be done, but my sense is that continuity would probably be preferable here. So again, relatively simple in not overwhelming the building. Now, we did have, I was asked by someone if this property, or if this project is crossing the property line. If you look at the drawings, the front porch front steps comes down, and it looks as if the last tread is crossing in that parcel boundary. I know with old buildings, I have one, and when the road came through, it kind of changed how the steps were. Then the road went in, and that's where the right of way was. So there's possibly a non-conforming issue here with that stairs. I think we can ask him about that later. But to the question of whether or not the BAR is approving things that cannot be built, the BAR is reviewing the design, and does this design, is it consistent with the conservation district or not? Is it compatible? If that bottom tread with the stairs is an issue with the parcel line, that's going to have to be resolved. A building permit cannot be issued if it's if something doesn't meet the setback requirements. So I think just to reassure folks that the BAR can approve a lot of things, but that doesn't mean that a project can be built. If it violates zoning, it violates zoning, and zoning prevails. The BAR does not does not prevail over the zoning ordinance in the city. So if there's a question about this front step, that would have to be resolved prior to getting a building permit. But I don't know, unless there's something on the drawings I'm not seeing, I don't see this building encroaching across the property line. So please, if I missed something, please let me know. So with that, are there any questions for me? And I know Robert's here and ready to speak.
Any
All right,
questions?
Mr. Nichols.
Great. Robert, the floor is yours.
Okay. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Thank you, Jeff, for that introduction. I'll just say one thing about that stair encroachment, and well, it's an existing non-conformance. It's been documented on many generations of surveys here, and it's an issue that the owners have. It's been part of a conversation that the owners have had with the city, and actually about the disposition of the street. They're the only resident on the street. It's not really maintained by the city. I say that just to satisfy curiosity. I'm not making a case for that or not, but anyways, it's an existing non-conformance. There's going to be some new treads on that stair, but the encroachment exists, as does the setbacks are also non-conforming, but have been there for a while, and they're compliant, or they match the average of their neighbors, as there are none. In terms of the addition, I don't have much to add, except for, yeah, those two views are great. If we can keep that scroll so that we can see both those conditions. Jeff referred to a conversation that he and I have had over the last few weeks. Super helpful. I haven't brought a project before the board that falls under these criteria, the historic district. I may not even have the acronym right, the historic control district, is that it? And so I'm kind of feeling my way through what the framework is, what guidelines matter here, and he's been helpful in that regard. We, in response to some questions of his about what is, this question of what's old, what's new, is there a distinction between the two? I thought about it here and wondered if we were missing an opportunity to kind of mark the new versus the old. Generally, even at a moderate distance, the porch is intended to look unified, and as you look across the facade of the building and on the left see the existing construction and the new. After submitting a different design, which I would like to refer to in a second, I submitted a second design, which is the one we see here, and that design lines up an actual structural column, that heavier column that you see in the screen, in the front screen assembly. It aligns that column with the position of what would have been the original column on that porch, and then it marks the edge of the enclosure seen above. And so in that just kind of allocation of space, the organization of the bays kind of recreates that proportion and marks that footprint of that original porch. We're content with the appearance of that, but I must say, but my client actually was less enamored of it when I told her about our idea, and that Jeff hadn't asked for that, but there was something when I started thinking about our answer to his questions about the old versus the new, I suggested this. I thought it might be helpful, but I would like to, since it was my client's preference for the previous design, is to just refer to that for a moment. And Robert, I have that queued up, that sheet. I could email it to you if that's appropriate to introduce another image at this point.
Sure, feel free to do that.
Okay, so let me just do that. While we're waiting for that to get to Robert and get up on the screen, our first pass at that design had just divided that front panel of the screen porch into 3 equal primary structural bays. And then each of those bays was divided into equal pair of screen panels, size for ease of construction, screen width, and kind of ergonomic comfort and proportion. And so this design, I don't have a head-on elevation at this right here handy for this, since I just realized I was going to send this to you now. But you can see that this, so even though that organization of that, I'll call it the facade of the screen porch, is quite regular in its pattern, it has a kind of just a non-corresponding alignment with the corner of the house, and a non-corresponding alignment with the original porch. So if I'm making myself clear, this was just kind of a regular pleasing pattern coming across the front, had no bearing and no kind of memory of the original condition. The pattern that we submitted subsequent to this, which was shown just a few moments ago, creates an irregular layout of the screen panels and the structural columns on the front, and nods, if you will, to the proportion, size, and literal position of the corner of that porch. I'm content with it either way. I do. I think I can certainly understand my client's perspective. I think it actually strikes me as a bit more dignified to have the regular spacing and the two heavier structural columns dividing the length of that front porch. But anyways, I think I've made that clear, and so I'll leave that to you to discuss or to ask further questions. Just to be, I think this was okay. Yeah. Other than that, as Jeff described, we saw in another view, maybe Robert, if you scroll down, you can see from the north, the porch turns the corner, and it's still about 8.5 feet wide at this point. That's the thickness that is being added to the side of the building. And then it kind of midway, it transitions to interior enclosed space, and there's a kitchen back there. That's all that I have to add at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Are there any questions from the public for the applicant?
We have 0 attendees, Ms. Lewis, but I feel like our discussions tonight are quite interesting. So.
And then I'll turn to questions from the BAR for the applicant, Mr. Nichols.
Mr. Nichols, this is Jody Alejandro. Do you know if the corner post is still within the existing infilled porch?
I know that it's not. If we were to look back at those images, in particular those older ones that Jeff had found, the porch was at its corners supported by matching columns, one of which is still existing on the left, and it's quite a large one. And in fact, maybe there are 3 equal ones in that case, but there's nowhere near enough room for that column to be concealed in that new construction. Also, every other trace of the old porch trim and also on the interior of the window that was deleted is all long gone. You can see the kind of quality of the exterior windows that was put there. That's kind of consistent with that newer construction throughout.
So the ceiling's gone as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for the applicant?
You're muted, Sherry.
Thank you. Like I said, I need all the help I can get tonight. There was an email we received earlier today from a member of the public who's also a neighbor. I'm going to read that, and it's from Louis Schultz. And he says, regarding the application for a certificate of appropriateness for 313 Steep Hill Street that's on tonight's agenda, the application pretty clearly shows that the proposed design not only has no setbacks from the property line, but goes so far as to extend beyond the property line. City planning staff seem to have overlooked that in their comments regarding the application. I'm a neighbor and not opposed to the plan, but the relationship between the proposed construction and the property line at least merits discussion that's on the record. The present application relies heavily upon existing records, and planners in the future deserve the same, especially if the present board agrees that extending new construction beyond a clearly delineated property line is not an issue of concern. I hope that it's discussed at tonight's meeting. And Mr. Warner replied to him to acknowledge receipt of that. And Mr. Warner tried to tell Mr. Schultz that we review the design only against the guidelines, that we don't deal with zoning requirements, with setbacks, with existing non-conforming conditions such as the porch or any protrusion allegedly beyond property lines, and that the project would obviously have to meet other planning review in order to get a building permit. And then Mr. Schultz replied, and I'm trying to summarize, he still thinks that the BAR needs to discuss these things. And he also made an additional comment that the siding running into the ground is a bit bizarre, and he believes inconsistent with common sense and with any historic precedent, and it might be a maintenance problem. And then he says it's mostly an aesthetic issue, but this is certainly a highly subjective review theater after all. I think I've pretty much tried to summarize this neighbor's comments if I can, in the interest of time. So I would just note the board it can take public notice of things that we're aware of, and certainly if, as Mr. Nichols has said, this is a non-conforming protrusion or a violation of the setback or whatever zoning things we don't deal with, that certainly is something that the city officials will review when they go for a building permit and go to review the site plan, but it's out of our purview for tonight. Hopefully I've addressed that concern a little bit, but I did think that the comment about the siding going all the way to the ground was interesting. I hadn't noticed that it doesn't really sit on a stone or brick foundation as other properties might. So
Mr. Nichols, in my memory, there's a building code requirement that siding must be at least 8 inches from the grade. Is that correct still?
Yeah. Yes.
That will resolve itself.
Yeah. It's hard in these digital models to when there's irregular terrain to get that all look the way it would be built. But yeah, it would be code compliant, and there's actually a fairly exhaustive planting plan also that goes with this. And maybe I should have submitted that, but I didn't. Thinking about what was needed for this particular review.
I can't be sure, but it looks like from the existing photos that the foundation is actually of stucco, or maybe it's brick with stucco applied over it.
That's correct.
Right.
The latter.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for the applicant from the BAR at this point?
Could I say one thing? I realize I may not have been clear what I would be asking for is, again, given the perhaps it's within the tolerances of design review light, or however we want to think of this, that if in the board's mind that either of those screen panel and structural layouts for the front porch are acceptable, it would be a pretty terrific thing to be able to offer, amongst the stakeholders, have a choice. But if not, then we would just leave with a specific decision. But
the ordinance allows a lot of flexibility with the conservation district, and one of the provisions is that a project that's been reviewed by the BAR, if there are some something changes or is tweaked, or that I have the ability to review that with the BAR chair's consent. So that's an avenue that's certainly available. So if in conceptually, and I guess if any specific details that you all on the BAR want to address, if it's an adjustment of to 4 instead of 5 or something to that extent, then I can approve those, and it would be with in consultation with the board chair or chairs, or as I normally do, I would bounce it off of all of you. But the ordinance does allow me to grant the approval after you've reviewed a project and that you are generally in support of.
Thank you.
Any further comments from the BAR about this application?
Is it possible for Robert to show us both of the designs side by side?
Yes, 1 minute. Are you able to see both now? Or just one?
Just the one, the one with the
Um,
symmetrical 3-bay.
Yeah, 1 sec. Just trying to figure out how to share 2 things side by side. 1 sec. How's that?
Yeah.
Oh, I can, yeah, I think I could move, I can see them. Anybody
Okay,
else?
sorry, I'll try to zoom out better.
Yeah,
for
no,
you.
that's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I have a motion. Having considered the standards set forth within the city code, including city design guidelines for historic conservation districts, I move to find that the proposed alterations and addition at 313 Steep Hill Street satisfy the BAR's criteria and are compatible with this property and other properties in the Woolham Mills Village Historic Conservation District, and that the BAR approves either of the 2 designs put forward by the applicant tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Lehendro. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Great. With that, I can call a vote. Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Miss Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Lehendro,
Aye.
Mr. Zemer,
Aye.
thank you. Mr. Timmerman
Aye.
and Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Great.
Thank you.
Anybody need a break for just 5 minutes, or do we want to continue? What's the feeling in the room?
Let's
Let's
go.
continue.
I'm seeing nods on the break or continue, which is, there's
Let's go.
other nods about.
Let's
Continue?
continue.
Let's
Okay.
plow through this.
Thank you.
8:15.
Thank you, thank you. We are moving on to the next application, which is 1901 East Market Street. Unfortunately, I have to note my conflict also here, but I am going to participate. I previously represented this applicant before the BAR. The current, I would say it's a theoretical conflict, but I don't have a conflict under the Conflict of Interest Act. I don't have any involvement in this current application, and don't have any stake in the outcome, monetary or otherwise. So I'll participate unless somebody has an objection to me doing so. I would say that I haven't had any discussions with the applicant about this matter, and my representation ended a long time ago. So, but I just want to note that because that's a matter of public record. I've appeared before this body. I think, I just wanted to note that we got updated drawings from the applicant just a couple of days ago. I know those will be posted, put up by Mr. Watkins, but just wanted to note that there was another round of them that arrived. And if that's all I have to say, Mr. Warner could give a staff report.
Yes. And this is this is one of these where, sorry, my computer is yelling at me. I'm just gonna think happy thoughts for a second and it'll stop. But this is a project that's within the Woolen Mills Historic Conservation District. However, it is a individually protected property. So in those circumstances, then the more stringent design guidelines prevail. So we'd be reviewing this as under the ADC district design guidelines. So it's that, people always ask that, but it's like, or for example, my house is an IPP, but it sits all by itself. So, but it's still subject to the ADC district guidelines. This is within the conservation district, the more rigid guidelines prevail. So we have, and Mr. Fink and I have been corresponding regularly, but both been traveling. I've been traveling as far and wide as he has. So I'm kind of glad that we've been able to get both of our vectors to coincide, or at least cross briefly this evening, and hopefully we can move this forward. And I know I shared some recent updates. Hopefully we can still have a good discussion that gets this thing moving towards a full review. So this is 1901 East Market Street, again, IPP. It is within the Woolen Mills district. It is contributing. Formerly it was known as a Purist Store. It was constructed around sorry, my computer can't see. Constructed around 1835. It's constructed originally as a two-story brick building with a gable front and a Victorian porch. The building was constructed to house a store for the workers at the nearby the Woolen Mills, as it's known, and it was converted into a house after 1875. I think it's continued to serve in that. This address has come to the BAR before. Some years ago, the addition that's there was reviewed, and also last month we had an informal discussion about this application, and John wasn't able to attend, but you all had some good conversation about it, and those recommendations were passed on to John. So again, this is a COA request for an addition to the rear. Essentially, it's extending a prior addition that was added onto the original 1830s structure. Okay, Robert, I'm reading. I think one of the things we were concerned about, or the BAR was concerned about, was that sort of that break between this edition and the prior edition, really to fully differentiate itself. And then there was a comment about the proposed addition site at the end of the house. The new construction will create a long plane. The addition should manipulate the roof line and wall material to break that up. So that's, I think, some of what you all have seen in the recent changes. So I had initially presented this to John as I knew that there were some changes they needed to make. So when we completed the staff report, we put it together in the manner of this being sort of a continuation of that preliminary discussion. And I know some additional information has been shared, but we still have the outline, and that's on sheet 2 of the staff report, that outline of the things that the information you're looking for, the criteria that you're going to review. And so a couple things. You can, I think it would be helpful to let John and the architect walk through their design and we can, if you all are comfortable with what's been presented, it is a variation of what was seen before. The VAR can certainly make a decision tonight. I hope at the very least, if this is, if a decision is deferred, that we send John and the architect, I'm sorry, I can't remember the architect's name, but to have them leave tonight with some really clear instructions about what the BAR would like to see and in what form, what changes. So I no need to spend an hour on this tonight, but I certainly want it to be productive for the applicant and the architect. So I'd like to just hand it off to John and take it from there.
John, if you wish to provide a presentation, I can go back and share my screen to your new renderings that you provided.
That would be wonderful. And can you all see me? I've turned on the video.
Yes, we can see you.
Oh, you can? Okay, great. Well, I'm John Fink, and I have Andres Pacheco, who's our project architect here. And I want to also make a disclosure. Sherry Lewis and I served on the Planning Commission together in the early 2000s. And I did have some legal matters that she represented me on, and this is many, many years ago. And so I'm fine with her not recusing herself because we've had no contact about this application whatsoever. And I know her to be very impartial. So I wanted to share that with all of our colleagues on the BAR. You know, we loved the comments and really appreciated the comments on the initial set of drawings that we submitted to you all. And we came back with this, which frankly, and if the BAR would choose to, we would love this to be considered tonight and hopefully voted on. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Pacheco, who's much more articulate than I am in the language of architecture, and he can walk you all through it and answer any questions you might have. And of course, I'm here as well. And thanks so much. And here's Andres.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for having us. Our camera is not working, but I trust that you can hear us and see us well. Well, thank you very much. So yes, we went carefully through the comments that you all made, most of you made in the last pass. So I have to say, smart comments, yes, and I think what you have in front addresses all of them, if not most of them. The understanding that this addition is needed to create the space that John needs for his house is basic. We are dealing with adding into an addition that was approved, not the historic component. And the comments that we heard before is that we were not sure if we were continuing the roof or breaking it. So suggestions about a bump were made, maybe bumping up or down or creating this addition, making it clear where the new addition starts and when the old addition ends, I think was on spot. And also the deck or the porch at the end was maybe trying to do too many things. Not sure is mimicking or not, but we decided to go and keep it simple. You all know, we all try to keep things simple. This addition is actually smaller in footprint than the previous design that you all saw in area and in simplicity to be built, simple, way simpler roof line. So this view that you see in sheet number 1 is actually the view that faces the street. And I don't know if you can see some trees there, but the second level is actually at the same level of the street. So if you see that line at the historic portion of the house, there's where the street is. And there are some trees there that actually screen the whole, actually we're sitting right here looking at the street, screen the whole facade. There was a comment also about a dormer without a window. I thought it was spot on. It always looked weird. But with this approach, just keeping the roof line simple and make the whole mass be actually the hyphen itself creating the job, then we don't have to worry about that because it's actually in the master room is the area where we don't want a window for privacy issues and for the sun getting into the bedroom. So if you scroll down a little bit, please, for sheet number 2, yes. Here's where you can see the before is down below and the after, the proposed is above. In the top right, you see the approach that we have towards the side, towards the east. Way simpler. We added a cover is a comment about maintenance and how durable this structure was going to be is spot on. John has access to really cool wood, so he was going to make it happen with the right wood and Ipe or the right material. So this way we don't have to worry about that. It's way more functional and flexible. And if you scroll down, please, to the sheet number 3, here is actually another view going to the north. To the north, we do want a window in the 3rd level. The 3rd level, I don't know if you can tell, but is this, in order not to create a 3-story structure, we are using the good old trick of putting the bedroom inside the roof. So we raise the roof a little bit to clear a clear definition, but at the same time, we achieve the minimum height that we need inside to make the space in the 3rd level usable. So that dormer facing north does have a window. The plans are in the sheet number 6, if it matters, but there's a little bit of space, a little bit of bathtub, great light coming from the north. I think that's wanted and easy to shade with some shades and screen.
Can I interrupt you?
Yes, please.
And also, folks, on our housing needs drove this program. My son, who's currently living in Thailand, is going to join us. He's 12 years old. And there's a good chance that our 22-year-old stepdaughter from Zurich is going to come and consider graduate work here. She's fluent in 4 languages, and she's visiting with us now. So we really do have space needs, and this is what drove this entire design.
Yeah.
And thanks. Sorry, and I'm going to turn that back over to Andres.
Thank you. So let's go probably to the sheet number 4, please. This is plain elevations. This is south and north. You can see on the left, the elevation facing the street. Those trees that you can see they're ghosted there, they're representative. They're robust trees there, screening the whole facade. And to the north, you can see the addition having the dormer with the glass, with the window there. The last sheet of this package contains the floor plans. These, the aerial views are right there, but in the last sheet is the floor plans are very simple. In the ground level is the top left. There's the 2 bedrooms that are the need for the young needs for the house, and the main level is the top right. It's just actually the actual box, the actual addition is the hyphen, is the addition, is the main level. It hosts a kitchen and a dining room and a deck. And the 3rd level is the bedroom hidden under the roof structure is the bedroom. It's going to be a great bedroom, screen and closet to the south, no windows, privacy to the max, and to the north you see that very fancy bathtub you're going to have there, and having a cool window. So that is the design. I can answer any questions that you may have, but we're excited where we are. And I think, again, thank you for the comments, and they were spot on. I think to manage this in a simple way that doesn't try to do too many things at the same time. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the public?
We have 1 attendee right now. If you'd like to provide comment, please raise your hand. You can find that in the participant tab. Ms. Lewis, I'm not seeing a raised hand.
Okay, and certainly that attendee, if she did want to speak, can just interrupt us. I think she might be familiar with this application. Are there any questions for the applicant from the BAR? Are you gentlemen going to force me to call on you? Mr. Alejandro, you have anything for us yet?
Why'd you pick on me?
I'm sorry.
No, I'm so relieved. I got my package from the city site yesterday, and it's still showing the prior design. So I'm so relieved to see that the proposed changes, and I find them, well, no questions. I'll save my comments.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the applicant? And if not, I'll move on to comments from the public.
Again, Ms. Catlin, if you wish to provide comment, please raise your hand using the raise hand feature and I'll call on you.
Seems like there are no comments from the public, so I'll throw it back at you, gentlemen. Comments from the BAR about this application. Or I'll randomly pick someone like Mr. Timmerman to ask for comments.
Well, that's funny. I was just ready to unmute myself, so it was good timing. I think, yeah, I'm kind of like with along the lines of Jody, where I hadn't seen anything new until just now. So I'm still kind of processing. But I am heartened to see there more consistency going on in the design. I think there might be a little more to go. I feel as if there's still while there's and I'm not coming at it from the standpoint of thinking that everything needs to be the same. But I think there was a comment made in the last meeting about the project where, you know, there was kind of I forgot what the term was, but there was almost too much variation. And I'm still seeing that to a certain extent. Like for instance, with the porch on the right-hand side, what the rendering appears to be showing is kind of a natural wood that is kind of off on its own with everything else. And I'm a much of a fan of contrast as anybody, you know, but I feel as if the contrast needs to have a very kind of a serious like effect and counter effect. And when there's, you know, kind of 4 or 5 materials working its way across the facade, like the historic fabric of the old, the glass window hyphen in between, which makes sense, you know, thinking of the old project where you had the glass and then the kind of an addition that was harkening back much more to the original house. Then, you know, the addition of the board and batten siding, and then the you know, kind of the raw wood on the end. I'm still finding like I want to consolidate that palette somehow, and need to kind of ponder that a bit more. However, I like the roof over the board and batten. I think that there's a bit of a more consistency going on with that versus the straight up that was shown before. I'm curious if you know, there's a instead of it just popping up, maybe it's a, you know, there's just 2 levels of roof that happen. So again, I'm kind of falling back on my thoughts about how to kind of create a consistency to then enhance the contrast between what's the old, the historic, and what is new. And one other comment I'll make, which I don't think I made last time, which is I wonder if there's a way to, and this might not be in the cards, but I'm wondering if there's a way to almost take your new ideas and sort of encapsulate that second edition as a way of kind of creating a more cohesive edition that then our new edition, new renovations from the past 20 years that somehow complements and sets off the historic. So these are just ideas I'm throwing out there as I'm sort of seeing this for the first time. And I will step back and love to hear what everybody else has to say.
Thank you, Mr. Timmerman. I would just to sort of, I want, of course, to hear everybody's comments on this. We do have, and Mr. Warner reminded me earlier, we do have sort of 3 options here. I realize that these materials came to at least 2 of the people that have spoken a little bit late, so we're just absorbing these things in the meeting. But our options tonight would be, because this has been submitted, to approve, and another one would be to defer to May, and the applicant could defer to May, or we could. And we could also defer and specify that it's a consent agenda item, but if there are a number of modifications that we're asking for, we probably wouldn't want our motion to actually successfully plant it on the consent agenda for next month. We'd want to have an opportunity to look at those, I would imagine. And then we could this evening deny the certificate of appropriateness. So hopefully that's not the case, but just to review our options on this application right now. Further comments from the board, Mr. Bailey?
May I? Yes. I actually think it's a very clean, simple, elegant design. I think it, in fact, enhances the situation of the original building itself. It doesn't detract from it, but it offers more space for the family to grow. And I think for me, it functions as a kind of modern frame for the older building itself. I think it's pretty clean and nice, and I wouldn't change it very much.
Thank you.
Yes, I like the improved, I'll call it improved roof line, the gable roof line. I think it goes well with the original house and the earlier additions. So I would be supportive of either approving this, or if we wanted to do a 1-month deferral so that other members could get some answers to the material questions or whatever, I'd be fine with that too. And I'll just note my earbuds are dying, so I might have to switch to chat in a little bit.
Thank you for letting us know. And the applicant and his representative have probably noticed that we are 6 instead of 9 members strong tonight. So a deferral could be, mean that it could be reviewed by 3 people. You can roll your dice. They may be very favorable and put us over the top, or but anyway, just an idea, because we are a little bit down on our numbers this evening. Mr. Edwards, you're the only person I haven't heard from, and I'm just checking in to see if you have any comments for us.
No, really, this is fairly new to me, aside from looking at it in the packet. I would be ready to vote on this tonight.
Can I see a show of hands of members that are prepared to vote favorably on this evening? Be in favor of it as is? Okay. Would any of you like to?
Could I share my why I would be favorably moved? I find that the forms are far more compatible with the between the historic, the first edition, and the newest edition, and I can support it because of where it is relative to the historic house. It's not competing with the historic house on a major street, and consequently, I can allow more leeway for personal likes, differences as a result. So I'm fine. I can support it as it is now, and that's why.
Any other further comments or refinements? And if not, if there's a motion?
We might not, Jeff, I'm not, I don't remember from the staff report, we might not have included a suggested motion for approval in the staff report because just frankly, we weren't anticipating approval, which is fine. But I might recommend that you can adapt the suggested motion for approval from the Steep Hill project and just change the wording to correspond to this project.
Right, and not mention the Historic Conservation District, but the ADC.
Oh, sure. Well, in that case, you can just adapt other ADC or IPP recommended motions. Yeah.
Yeah, it is an IPP. Simply take the last one or any of them, and we refer to the EDC, district design guidelines. I no longer sort of do the chapter by chapter, so refer to them in a whole, and that is your references to this is it's consistent with the individually protected property. Certainly can say IPP in lieu of reference to an ADC district.
I'll give it a shot if someone wants. Yes, all right.
Yes, go ahead.
Let's see if I can get all the wording in. Having considered the standards set forth in the city code, including the city design guidelines for ADC districts in Charlottesville, I move to find the proposed alterations and additions to the house on Market Street. What is the address?
1901.
1901 Market Street satisfy the BAR's criteria and are compatible with this property and other properties in the as an individually protected property in a historic conservation district, and the BAR approves the application as submitted.
And if I could request a clarification to refer to, I don't know, is there a date on the drawings? Something that
April 19th, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
They're submitted in the drawings of April 19th.
Okay.
2022.
Thank you.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Mr. Watkins, you want to call the roll?
Sure. So Ms. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Lehendro?
Aye.
Mr. Timmerman?
Aye.
Mr. Zemer?
Aye.
Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
And Mr. Bailey?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Congrats to the applicant and his representative.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
We are now on to other business. We're at the very end, gentlemen. If no one wants a little 5-minute break, we can move on to the staff questions, discussion, and the court's expansion. Mr. Warner?
So quickly, Robert, can you pull up that fence question?
Sure. And did you also want to, I can do that first, or also since Robert Nichols is still online. I don't know if, yeah. I just so we don't keep him too long, if that's all right with you, Jeff.
You're
Yeah.
such a nice Virginia gentleman.
Yeah, Robert, I have your new submission, I think, queued up if you're prepared.
I am. I really appreciate this. I know you certainly don't have to worry about keeping me up. I know you guys are at the end of your session. And my intention here, this is about the 310 East Main Street project. And I think January, I last showed it to you. That project has a facade on the mall on Water Street, and really the mall one is almost 2 facades. And so I expect to be back in May seeking approval, and I'm hoping, and we've, after a good conversation with you all last time I was here, we've made some significant changes in that the ornamental component that's covering the elevator shaft. So what I was hoping to do this evening is just quickly show that and see if I could discern any enthusiasm or comments which would help lighten the load of next month's meeting, and then also give us guidance on how to focus our work in the interim. You can go to the next sheet, Robert. Thank you. Yeah, there we go. And this is here just as a reminder. This was the I showed you was largely, it was an abstract design shown on the right, kind of a mock-up, a series of tiles that were using a novel technology to create a pattern. In this case, it was an abstract pattern, raised a lot of questions, some confusion. I asked you to squint, that didn't help. And so after that, so excellent comments, some kind of practical ones. What happens down low towards the ground with these angled tiles or wings sticking out? Is that a problem? Yes, it is a problem. If I flatten them against the building, then given the parameters of the design, it gets kind of dark and dreary. What was the specific pattern I was proposing? It was a little early in our process and didn't have that nailed down. And so really one thing that kind of popped up is I felt a little rudderless here with this kind of blank slate and just kind of this interest in this kind of visual effect. And so I decided to adopt some data, some facts about the place and the history of this place, and in turn the topography we got interested in, and some really just kind of basic, I think, things that kids probably learn in grade school or middle school here about geology and the topography and specifically the history of the Three-Notch Road as it winds its way from Richmond to Stanton. You can go to the next image. So working with what I think is probably one of the more comprehensive pieces of history on the Three-Notch Road. It's dating from the mid-70s at the university. Is a small written history that includes this map seen at the top of this image. And so we started to develop a scheme where we could make use of that interesting, varied, but also very linear path, and how we might help use that to inform the design on this decorative element. So we gathered information at the top. You see that this map, that map is kind of overlaying the understood path of the Three-Notch Road, but on a modern map. So you see current population centers and of course current roadways. That lower diagram is us grabbing USGS topographic maps that overlay that, so that we could get some topographic information. And then that topographic information clearly reflects some things that I've always found super interesting about this area, and I learned about when I was in architecture school here. There's just really basic geology. We have this fall line that really follows Route 95 and establishes the coastal plain to the east. We live in this Piedmont zone, which is really kind of transitional between that coastal plain and the Blue Ridge to our west. And so these kind of fundamental, really basic bits of history and science that I find endlessly interesting, because really any walk around town or a drive west or east immediately reveals the kind of presence of these conditions. We can go to the next sheet. So the vertical panel that covers the elevator shaft divided it up into, established a grid structure, or really a grid kind of geometry. Sometimes it's recognized structurally, sometimes it's not in our design. You can see on the left we're fitting the Three-Notch Road and its intersection with various population centers. So we've scaled that and oriented it so that it fits in that vertical boundary. Same with our collection of topographic maps. And then so what that's yielded is, well, then we have this data, and then we just worked with different ways, largely using the technology that I described, the technology and materials that I described previously, but just came up with ways to kind of code and represent those bits of data, but really with an emphasis on visual variety and a pleasing visual effect. It's intended to be didactic only to the extent one wants it to be. That's how we're thinking of it. Its first job is to be pleasing to look at, but I find it pleasing also that it's of its place, and it's talking about its place in in this context, both historical, economic, geological. Is that that's the frontal view. It has it still has some of this effect that where the view, the appearance of it is dependent on the angle at which you view it. That said, I've opened up most of those apertures so that no view is kind of without brightness coming through. These renderings still, one reason that I think they're coming through darker than the actual effect would be. I think the previous view does it better justice, and that's because we're able to rely on this computer-driven fabrication technology to make the holes and the patterns in this metal work. They're actually quite small relative to a building this scale. So these very small holes that are establishing, describing or coding, representing the Piedmont, for example, they're shrunk down too much in these views. So in terms of that brightness and variety and detail, I think that previous view is indicative. These views do show, as you can see in the upper panels, where we actually get into the Blue Ridge and much more significant topography. I let the angle of those tiles open up and both create three-dimensional relief, but also reveal more of the brightness of the color, the background color. Anyways, I don't want to go on. I spoke way too long last time. This is the work we've been doing, and it feels good to have kind of a context and a data underlying this work. It's given us some direction, and so we hope to have this further developed. But I feel like this is getting much closer. Further developed when we see you next month. That's
Mr.
it.
Nichols, were you looking for comments from the board?
Yes, if you're willing, that would be, I'd be grateful.
Members?
Just curious, how do you wind the 3-notched trail through those tiles? How is that going to be represented and seen?
Well, there's the way I described that construction the last time, it was this pretty good sized array of tiles this big, and they were each getting manipulated and then get put up there. What we're doing now, and I didn't want to go into it because I think the visual effect is pretty similar, but we're actually working with panels about 3 foot square. And when one of these, what would have been a bent individual tile before, is actually just a laser cut of 3 sides, which allows for what I call wings to be pulled out. So a 3 foot square piece of metal will span horizontally half that panel, and then 3 foot portion of it vertically, and it'll contain an array of those possible tiles. The way that the path is going to be kind of deviant, and what that's going to do is what would normally be 2 tiles of equal size will be 2 tiles of non-equal size and irregular boundaries. So that gap is just going to be about a 3/4 inch gap between the 2 meeting tiles, 2 meeting panels. Is that Did that
And is
register?
there light coming behind it?
No, it's a much brighter, a kind of a bronze anodized material. We'll have samples of that next month, but it's just a color contrast and a brightness difference. And the material in front is probably about 3/16 of an inch thick, so there's not a terrible amount of shadow. There's not a lot of relief until there's bending happening. But at the actual definition of the roadway, that's just a parting between the two black panels, and the little bit of relief there. So that's how that registers.
It's an intriguing idea, and I admire you for coming up with it. I just still struggling with what it's going to look like. It's graphic. I mean, what we've seen is graphic, and it's also, we're trying to imagine something that I don't have any personal experience with. I've never seen it.
The first time I brought this, this was a system, and the question of what it looks like was very fair and a good one. I think what I've shown tonight, or well, let's see, the design work we've done, what I've tried to represent tonight is very close to what this is going to look like. There is a representation puzzle with this because it's up in the air. It has kind of a challenging perspective and a challenging scale. I think I need to maybe take some multiple sections so that those views can be much bigger, as if you're on a helium balloon and able to elevate 10 feet, 14 feet, because there is a lot of, there's a lot to see, and it's actually been digitally modeled in quite deep amount of detail and accuracy.
Would you be able to provide digital versions that are close-ups of that facade so that we could see how those things might actually look?
Yeah. I think really the kind of the straight elevation, the non-rendered model is a fair way to look at it in the aggregate. But for those renderings, yes, it's helpful to see the whole building, but it is not very informative about the piece. So yeah, that's a good approach. We'll just go right up close. The whole thing will be represented in another view, and we'll just get a very close-up view.
I mean, it seems like such a crafted thing. I'd like to see a mock-up of some.
I think next time we'll have a piece of metal that's maybe a 3x3 grid of the wings, irregular edge, and then we'll be able to put the proposed backing material behind it.
And that'll be very helpful because we'll be hopefully meeting in person, so we'll be able to really touch it and see it.
Touch it. I'll wash our hands and then pass it on.
Bring sanitizer with you, Mr. Nichols, and we'll pass it down the dais as we pass the samples along. Thank you, Mr. Zemer, for pointing out that we might actually be in person. It would be great timing to be able to see a physical example of what we're talking about. So, any other comments? Thank you, Mr. Nichols.
Thank you again for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Mr. Werner, did I hear a fence or something that you need us to look at?
Yeah. I just think that's a great offer. I could probably just say, hey, the next meeting, will you guys come over and walk around my house with me and help me make some decisions? So this is 413 Ridge Street. And oh gosh, I think it was in January, February, the folks that bought it did a bunch of landscaping and got it approved, and had asked to, and we're given permission to put a fence along the, I believe that's Oak Street, or is it Dice? Yeah, it's Oak. And they called me the other day and said, can we extend it around the front yard? And we'd like to do something a little bit different with the something with the horizontal boards. And so it's, we've approved a horizontal design fence over in Ridge Street District, and we've actually approved that color fence. You see the 2194 on it. We've approved, or you all have approved a fence similar to that in material. So I felt like this was a reasonable request, and one that I could probably handle with just amending the drawings and letting them move forward, unless you all had any really significant issues with it. And so
Anybody
it
have
would
any,
be,
yeah, anybody have any objection from changing what we approved in February, which is a traditional picket fence, to this horizontal board? I think you're all good.
all right, thank you. And then if we can, I think everyone was on when we started talking earlier. I did, well, I guess everybody that was, other than David, was not here. So I don't know, David, if you had any questions about what we're talking about with the courthouse, if you needed anything, I could offer that. But I think we had a good talk, and I guess I would ask for the BAR if you feel any instruction to offer to me as far as me talking with Mr. Freeze, the NDS director, about extending the COA for the demolition, selective demolition of the Levy annex. And if you had any recommendations that I could take into that discussion with him. And that'd be the first question. And then the second question is to invite you, if you have any questions that, you know, we can figure out how to maybe move forward with a letter or a recommendation, or if that's something that maybe someone would like to draft something up for the board to discuss in May, or something tonight.
I think our esteemed chair can do the letter. I think I'll figure that out.
Easy to designate to somebody that's not here.
Give it to the person who's not in the room, right? Does anybody, we had discussed earlier, I know David, you had problems getting on the link, Zoom link, but we are, and I think you saw the discussion in the packet or materials that Jeff had sent, if you did by email, that they're looking at an extension for the demolition certificate of appropriateness to demolish the annex behind the levy building for the courts project. We're hamstrung in that we can't directly require an archaeological survey, but we would strongly like to recommend it. Jeff has indicated that he thinks the worst case scenario cost would be $35,000. Typically this might be smaller, but considering the history of the, actually probably, I mean, it's actually a huge, you know, that building is going to be 54,000 square feet. I was just reading that. It's like but you know, it's a large parcel. It's a large parcel in the city, that square that this project's going to be on. And I don't find that, I mean, I don't know anything about the cost of archaeological, but Jeff thinks he's got some, Jeff and Robert Watkins have access to some funds for surveys, and they could scoot some of that over. What we'd like to do is somehow to have that county voluntarily and spontaneously offer to cover some of those costs without really compelling them with a stick, and threaten to not extend this, I guess is the nicest way I would say it. But staff seemed to say that they were pretty hopeful that the money could come together for that. Anybody have, do we want to take just a vote, like a consensus vote, and just say we're supportive of this? And are there any, I also wanted to say disturbing dead bodies, I looked it up as a class 4 felony in Virginia.
So if I can just throw in here, this is a phase one archaeological investigation, which is sort of determining if you have something there that should be looked at. It is not now, if there are bodies, that's a different set of circumstances, and the treatment of whatever would remain of any person that's in the ground. There's an appropriate way to do that. Our suspicions is that there's at least reports of a well behind Swan Tavern, which is currently the Redlands Club. There's also the documentary evidence indicates there was a privy located in the parking lot between the Swan Tavern and the Levy building. So those are 2 points of interest. Should they be located, a phase one doesn't go dive in and start excavating. In fact, it very well likely could be that we document the fact that something is located, if in fact it is, then they cover it up, and it's there for the next generation to go take a look should that happen. But so it is not a the other thing would be any artifacts, any information that sort of would tell us how that site was used, having had it as established as the city battery. What did that mean? Is there anything we can glean from that information? But and as I wrote in that note to the county, in no way, shape, or form would this slow it down, stop it. I don't think there's any pyramids buried under there. I don't think there's anything of any monumental scale. If there is, wow, thank God we looked. But this is not the goal here. Is due diligence as local governments that have both established policies respecting cultural, historic, and archaeological resources. This is property that the city and the county own, and it would seem appropriate to do this. So what I'm asking from you all tonight is to maybe acknowledge what I'm saying. When James and I talk, we will express to the county and the city the extension of the COA, and to reiterate the BAR has expressed it continues to encourage that find a way to conduct this archaeological work and find a way that we all participate in it. So this isn't I know. And what had happened, David, last time, the county, we had talked about this with them ahead of time. They came into the BAR meeting or almost immediately. In fact, if you read the minutes, probably 3/4 of the discussion was about the archaeology. And so they offered to do it. They were willing to do it. And I think with the understanding that this was a relatively simple phase one and not something dealing with a lot of fill. And so they changed their mind. It's just the scope of work seems like it could be a little more complicated than the sort of test pits at the regular intervals. And so I said, I spoke with the archaeologist. The thought is there's a lot of fill that would have to be removed. I expressed that earlier. And so does that sound, are you all okay with me having conversation with James and sort of reemphasizing your support for that? And then
seeing a lot of nods. I think Jody had a comment a little while ago. Jody, do you want to?
No, my comment is to acknowledge, to move that we strongly support archaeology, to do whatever Jeff wants. Yes, of course we should.
And then I would probably, I can speak with Mr. Gastinger. Maybe we can draft something up that could be, circulated and then forwarded so that we can kind of keep the things moving. And then I would also ask, a lot of you involved in different groups, different preservation interests, help me get the word out, help, it's going to take, city and county residents expressing support for this. And again, I don't think it's the county doesn't want to do it. I think this was a cost, as we all know, that this thing's being watched very carefully. And so there's concern that it just doesn't run away. And I think by offering, and maybe we should have done that all along, is to offer some partnership with them in figuring this out. We'll solve it. Oh, by the way, Jody, I did just get an email earlier about the church on West Main. I don't know if you saw it, the the national, it passed the 106 review for the grant. So I think,
Oh, good gracious, good.
yeah, I know. I was kind of surprised that that still was being viewed, but that's.
No, it should have been done a year and a half ago. It should have
So
been done a
that-
year and a half ago. It has held up the construction of second phase for a month because the Park Service realized that they screwed up and they didn't get this done a year and a half ago.
Sounds like something I would have.
So
messed
back
up
to
on.
the courts expansion discussion,
Yes.
we have a motion on the floor and I had
Oh,
expressed in the pre-meeting that I'd like actually for us to take a vote on this and
Okay, good.
maybe
Good.
it's not on a application vote, obviously, but we can vote as a group and I think it'd be a good idea. Do we have a second on Jody's motion? Just anybody?
Second.
David, I think got it. And all in favor, maybe raise your hand.
I'm
Great.
recording that as
It was
unanimous.
unanimous? Great. Let us know what we can do, Jeff, but we'll definitely reach out to our answer groups we're in or whatever.
It seems
And I
like
can
at the,
appreciate
seems
that.
like at the end of the day, Jeff, like the cost of the activity is well below the cost that they would incur if something was found during construction and then, delays started happening. So
Yeah, and that's
if
where
nothing else,
it's,
it's insurance.
yeah, and it's I mean, I've walked a lot of tight ropes in my professional career, and I'm walking on one long razor blade with this one, and I don't want to say I'm in a precarious position, but I think I'm going to have to really reach out and around and say, everybody, it's okay, it's okay, okay. 'Cause there's always this immediate response. Oh my God, archaeology, you're going to hold everything up. You're going to slow everything down. Well, as the archaeologist, and I'm trying to not name names just so that we don't get into any, debates about who's saying what, but there is a due diligence responsibility here. We do know that there may be a body there. And as they said, well, if there's one, sometimes there's more. And, but it is our local history that we have an opportunity to look at it. And I would also say, if any of you all that love diving into historic documents and old newspapers, that's where I found a lot of this stuff. You find the police report of a body, somebody got in a fight and killed someone and threw him down a well. So, there's things out there that help support what we're recommending to the city and county. So with that, I don't have anything left. Thank
Great.
you.
Well, good.
And I will let you all know about the May meeting. We will see.
I want to point out that the end of the meeting lottery estimate goes to Ron Bailey and Robert Edwards, who said 8:15. We're pretty close to that. I think you two. Sorry. So
Yeah,
congratulations.
Jeff is buying us a bottle of scotch.
Okay, I'll bring it to the next meeting and we'll pass it down the dais.
That's right.
See how it
And
goes.
wash your hands
Won't be
first.
sharing.
Thank you
Yeah,
all.
James, I was going to say by Price is Right rules, you win.
No, I
So-
I set the rules and I
Yeah.
said over under, so closest to congratulations anyway.
Yeah.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor, press the leave meeting button.
Thank you all very much.
Class at
See you next
8:30,
month.
bye.
Have a good week.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye, thanks.